Welcome back to the Rice Report, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our interview series. Sorry, we've been a little bit lax on our lives lately. Life has been very busy, starting a business, dealing with stuff in the country, having a family, praising God, doing all that good stuff. A lot of things are taking some of my time on the live. So I will be doing an economic update here in the next couple of days. But today we are joined by a man who needs no introduction. He's rejoining us here. Louie Gohmert is with us here today. We're going to be covering three, I think, really important things to understand from an expert and a person who's walked down these roads. Number one, the legal system. We have some seriously bad decisions being made at the highest levels of courts. Judges are an issue. And then we're going to talk about taxes and tariffs and congressional, process and policy and timeline. So, Louie, welcome back to the show. It is so great to have you here. Thank you for joining us. We just had a great conversation off camera about boxing, and that kind of gets our bloods going, blood pumping a little bit. But Louie, talk to us right now about these decisions we're seeing. We're trying to deport illegal criminals to their own country, and judges are rejecting it. We have lies in the media about a Maryland man who's not from Maryland, who's definitely a member of MS-13 and from El Salvador. What in the world is going on out there?
Well, it is the lawfare that's been going on for every time Trump has done something as president, which is constantly it erupts into lawsuits in the lawfare. And so we've seen it. I didn't know where Mike Johnson got his numbers, but that 62% of federal injunctions in the last century were handed down against Trump, and 92% of those were Democrat-appointed judges. But that's not really adequate to just say they were Democrat-appointed judges, because David Souter was a Republican-appointed judge. Justice of the Supreme Court. And the story was that he was trying to decide between justice on the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. She is very conservative, very consistent. And David Souter, that didn't have that much of a paper trail, was a judge from New Hampshire. But John Sununu was a top advisor to George H.W. Bush. And I've never talked to Sununu, but the rumor going around was that Sununu said, look, I know you're having trouble deciding between these two. I don't think you can go wrong with my friend from New Hampshire. So Souter gets the nod, and he gets on the bench and becomes as far left as anybody we had. And not only did he do that for like 25 years or so, but if George H.W. Bush had appointed a real conservative like Clarence Thomas, like he did earlier, then there is no way in heck that that justice would have retired during Obama's presidency, so Obama could appoint a replacement. So you're talking about a generational thing for decades and decades because of that big mistake. And some judges just cannot, they get, well, I guess it's like Stalin said, Eric, with power dizziness. They get the black robe in a federal bench, and they're told that nothing can interrupt their serving for life. And so they get a little cocky and they say some cocky political things, and nothing happens to them, and they get more political and more political. And then they see somebody like Donald Trump they just don't like. And they are happy to be part of the machinery that goes after him. And so the weaponry really that goes after him and his decisions. So it's really been tragic to see the way justice has been so perverted by these people that are supposed to be serving. And Eric, we impeached two judges early on when I was in Congress. One had been convicted of sexual assault.
Oh, good Lord.
And so, yeah, not only should he have gone to prison, which he did, but he needed to be off the bench. Well, he was off the bench, but you don't get your paycheck cut off unless you resign or you're impeached. And that paycheck kept coming every month while he was in prison. So we had to impeach him just to cut off the checks. And so we did, but he resigned before the Senate voted. The other was a judge from Louisiana that there were allegations of bribery. But if you look at the 12, 13 judges that have been impeached in the history of the U.S. Congress, and going back to 1789, they are all on the basis or what's really under Article 2 that says you want to impeach an executive, it must be for treason, bribery, other high crimes and misdemeanors. Well, that's Article 2, which it does talk about impeachment, but Article 2 is all about the executive branch. It's not about the judicial branch. The judicial branch is under Article 3. And if you look, and you look at the wording, it says the judges shall serve during their, and these are the two words, good behavior. And so
how do they define good behavior?
Well, it's a bit abstract, actually, but to me, it shows the genius of the founders. Yeah, we're going to have some hooligans get elected that may not ever actually get indicted and convicted. So, you know, that's what it'll take to get rid of the executives. But if a judge, and I think so many of them quoted the Bible back in those days. And in fact, Congress, in its history, the Bible is the most quoted book ever. But a lot of them knew Leviticus, that a judge is to be righteous and not to help the poor, not to lean to the rich or mighty. You're supposed to be right down the middle, being just. And I think that's what they were shooting for. So they didn't want to wait until a judge committed some crime before he or she could be removed. They felt like it was good enough to say, if they're just engaging in bad behavior, they need to go.
Absolutely.
And so I think you look at Article 3, that's the judicial article of the Constitution. That's what we should have been applying. And for 18 years on the Judiciary Committee, I think 12 of them in the majority, I was always pushing the majority. Look, guys, let's call some of these judges, subpoena them, bring them in here, ask them about their bad behavior, because that's the standard. But even when we impeached those two around 2009, 2010, they basically involved crimes, but I believe we had every right to impeach a judge and take them to trial in the Senate for bad behavior. And Eric, I also firmly believe that you bring some of these judges in and start grilling them in front of 40 people. And yes, one side will be very defensive for them, but still they're going to have tough questions to answer. And the world is going to see them squirming in the hot seat, or they're going to see their arrogance, and it's not going to be a good look. And other judges are going to realize, I don't want to be called in about my bad behavior. And they'll do more like state judges. Federal judges have gotten away with all kinds of outrageous comments for decades, but it has gotten so much worse. But there were so many times during my decade as a district judge handling felonies, major civil litigation, I would see a comment that a federal judge made and was going, wow, I could never, I would be thrown off the bench if I made that kind of comment from a state appellate court that I was on, or a state district court. So these judges, even if they're not impeached, bring them in, subpoena them, get them there, and just grill them on their bad behavior. That has got to happen. I really believe that, Eric.
I think it has to happen. Did you say we've only impeached 13 judges since the 1700s?
Yeah, one of them was the one that we did while I was there that was in prison. And I think his lawyer was telling him it'll take them 2 or 3 years to get this thing done. So just keep denying, keep pushing back. And we got it done very quickly. And after he was impeached, the vote for impeachment from the whole House, he resigned rather quickly. But the 12 that have gone to trial in the Senate, 9 of them were convicted by the Senate. That's the term you use in order to remove them, and 3 were not convicted. Doesn't mean they weren't guilty. It just means they were not convicted. The evidence was not
They had the votes.
or political.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's all there's been, and that's not
crazy.
enough to wake people up that are on the bench. Now, there was an issue back in 2009, 2010, and this somebody actually brought it up that, well, guys, remember though, last time there was impeaching in the House, it was a judge, a federal judge down in Florida named Alcee Hastings. And after he got impeached and removed from the bench, he ran for Congress and he's been here ever since. So the question was, do we want to run the risk of impeaching and removing a guy so that he ends up in Congress with us? So that thought came up, but we were going, no, but these guys, one's a sexual predator and the other has been engaging what appears to be bribery. So, yeah, so we went ahead anyway, but that was an issue.
That's the incentive structure of DC, right? You mess up one time and you get a promotion. That's kind of the way it's been working.
Yeah.
It has to change. 13, those are rookie numbers. 13 and 200 years. Those are rookie. We got to pump those numbers up. It's time for the Judiciary Committee to start committing to 2025, 2026 should be known as impeachment palooza. We should be going on an impeachment campaign.
And I think it needs to be Article 3 that they have not been serving during good behavior. And the mere fact that the founders spelled behavior with a O-U-R at the end instead of a O-R doesn't mean they didn't know what it was. They knew what good behavior was. And they wanted judges that were not playing politics from the bench. And when you have, 90% of judges that are deciding, 92% deciding against Trump, that are activist Democrats, then it says we got to haul these people in while we can, and it shouldn't be delayed. And I every time I brought it up, and it's still going on today. And I love Jim Jordan; he's a great guy. He's just terrific. But his idea is what's happened during the 12 years I was there. We were in the majority. Well, maybe if we just call in some experts to talk about their bad behavior, that'll really make a difference. That'll be a good step. And doing that, Eric, if you're arrogant enough to think you're bulletproof on the bench, and that's a bad term. I had lots of death threats when I think
it's a good term. We'll stick with it. Arrogance.
Well, it was, because nobody wants, I certainly don't want anybody assassinated. In fact, I had it was kind of interesting on a side note, all the death threats I had, the one that was loading up the weapons and coming to the courthouse to get me, I was going, I don't know this guy's name. I don't know who that is. Well, it turned out another judge had sentenced him, but he saw me on television and I ticked him off so bad he decided I was the one they needed to kill. And they had a big shootout at his house and he ended up being killed. But he was actually coming, but I never even had contact with the guy. He just seen me on television. But anyway.
When was that?
Yeah. Pardon?
What year was that? When was that?
Well, it was back in the 1990s,
So we've had raving lunatics for much longer than most people realize. Holy cow, I didn't even know that. You got to make a
Yeah.
documentary of your legal and congressional careers. You have so
Oh,
many amazing stories.
well, and we were trying one murder case in our county in Texas here in Tyler, and the my predecessor had tried it once to a hung jury and couldn't get a conclusion. And so when I took office, this was an old case that needed to be tried, and people were going, half the county, thinks he's guilty. The other half thinks he's not guilty. Could never kill his mother, and a big high society case. And so, but not all of them, but a number of my judge friends were going, Louie, this is a political disaster for you. You need to just recuse yourself. You don't have to give a reason. Recuse yourself, bring in a visiting judge to try it. And so I agonized over that. I didn't have a legitimate basis to recuse myself. There was nothing that disqualified me at all. There was no appearance of partiality to either side, even. And so I lost sleep most of one night, thinking about the advice I was getting, just recuse yourself. And I'm going, but I don't have a legitimate basis. And by the next morning, I'd realized if I'm going to run from the position I ran for, I shouldn't even be in this position. And so I went ahead and tried the case, and there were a lot of people that hated my guts, that
That's
were
part of
on.
being a judge.
Yeah, yeah, and most of them will speak to me now. But anyway, it's part of being a judge. But normally, if you have any questions about whether or not your impartiality might be an issue, then you recuse yourself. And
Sure.
here you have Beryl Howell, that she's been the Chief Justice or the head justice of the D.C. courts, and there was a motion to recuse her. I got the article here, and she says the clear absence of any legitimate basis for disqualification requires denial. And she's the one. She granted a warrant against Trump as being a flight risk.
Yeah,
And,
I remember that.
this is a person who has been very outspoken about her hatred for Trump. And she's made clear she can't stand anybody that supported Trump. And so, like the other judges, most all I'm aware of on J6 cases, they were so hateful just
Yeah.
because somebody supported Trump. They should not have had those cases. But and for her to say there is a clear absence of any legitimate basis for disqualification, if you look at the statute that was passed back in 1948 by Congress, and I know some say, well, Congress doesn't have the right to set up ethics for the federal courts. Well, yes, we do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's
That's what
an
Congress is
argument
for.
that we
Yeah.
don't for the Supreme Court because they're created by the Constitution. They can set up their own ethics, perhaps, but then we still have the right to impeach them if they're engaged in bad behavior. But even in both the 1948 law and in the federal canons of ethics, if there is any chance that your impartiality might be questioned or be reasonably questioned, then you should recuse yourself. So
100%.
this is either a very ignorant federal judge, Beryl Howell, or she is just so vindictive, maybe suffering from Trump derangement syndrome, that she should not ever be handling a case involving Trump or any of his supporters. So these are issues that we can't play around with. And we did that for 18 years. I was in Congress, and it was one of the biggest frustrations. Guys, we got to deal with this while we got the chance. And people, well, it might make us look too vicious or political. No, you're trying to save the Constitution. Let's do it. And it was more like, it's kind of like our deficit. Well, we'll just do this on this occasion and get by, and we'll deal with it next time. And next time, it never happens.
Yes. Yeah, it's kick the can, a whole new story. And these stories about the politicization of a judge, like a judge shouldn't be concerned about how they're politically seen. A judge should be focused in on the law, and the law should be the ruler. So it brings up a topic in America that a lot of people are concerned about is the electoral process for judges, local judges. It is the least, from being in local politics for a few years, it is the least known race. So as you're voting for local, you're voting for state senators and congressmen, the judges, no one knows. Like, you can go to any polling station and say, who are you voting for? Which you're not supposed to do. But you can, outside the station, you can say, who are you voting for district judge? And people will say, I just voted for the Democrat, or I just voted for the Republican. They don't even know their stances on things. Yeah. People need to get really involved. If one thing is being shown in the political process in America today is a silent Marxist takeover of the legal system. These are, we call them radical lefts and progressive and Democrat. They are Marxist. These are Marxist agendas where political judges who, look at what is her name? The most recent appointee to the Supreme Court who can't define a woman. Like, the fact you can't define a woman, that should instantly disqualify. If you can't answer a simple question a third grader can answer, you got to go, or kindergartner. So how do we get through this, Louie? Like, what is we have Soros funding judges for 25 years. And recently people have been saying, oh, he's really funding. He's been doing it for 25 years. He is a Marxist. Like, there is no question about it. How do we get through this and get better judges on the seat to make constitutional decisions without politics?
Well, in Texas, as I said, we elect our judges, and people say, well, we want our judges appointed so we get politics out of it. Let me tell you, Eric, I like electing judges.
Sure.
We do appoint judges. When I was appointed Chief Justice to finish an unexpired term in the Court of Appeals, that was an appointment, but the governor appoints to fill an unexpired term. But otherwise, we elect our judges. And I know the arguments against electing judges has gone on for many decades, but I would submit that it is certainly no more political than getting people appointed, because getting appointed is such a political process.
Oh, yeah. It's a backdoor politics.
Who and it's all behind closed doors. And, you may show interest in a federal bench. I never have. People thought, when I ran for Congress, he's just wanting to be a federal judge. No, I'm wanting to legislate, and I'm not going to do it from the bench. So I ran for the chance. But, you don't have an outing as there should be for judges. So I would tell people on judicial elections in Texas who ask, look, if you find a name you don't know, don't vote just because of the name, because we've elected some bad, even Republicans, just because their name sounded better. But you've got it. So it's critical that we educate people on who the good judges are. And really, Eric, I think in Texas, we've got so many grassroots groups that are trying to do that and make clear, like in the recent Wisconsin election, which didn't work out well, that we're trying to make sure that everybody understood who the two people were. Well, the left got out. They had a lot more money to spend. They got more people out and voted, but on that position. But that was interesting because they did approve a conservative measure as well. So anyway,
I I don't think people give us enough credit in Texas for like the grassroots movements. I'm just north of Dallas, and I've been involved in a bunch of groups, and it started a couple
Yeah,
years ago. People really do a good job, but when people are voting, the problem is they don't have any funding, and I'm not really big into like. I think the government for presidential campaigns should set a budget for both parties. All the Citizens United, PAC dark money is really making politics ugly. But at the local level, it exists, but it doesn't exist in like even the grassroots groups. They focus in on the politicians and not necessarily the judges. So I forget the name of them,
yeah,
but there's a group in Austin that produces this scorecard, and it gives the top 10 biggest cases of each judge that's running for a position, and it shows the case, a breakdown of the evidence, and then the final decision the judge made. Like that kind of stuff needs to happen everywhere. Like full
yeah, very helpful.
transparency. Yeah, very helpful. So there's a lot of grassroots people who listen to this on Rumble. That's an area to focus on if you're working on
Very
politicians.
important.
Work on the
Well, and
judges.
also a lot of DA's races had not gotten the attention they should have. They certainly had
It's
not
true.
gotten the financial backing. And years ago, when we first heard a rumor that Soros money was going to be playing in district attorneys' races, at first, my first reaction was, oh, good, he's going to spend time there and not on Congress. But then you realize, oh my gosh, he's going right to the foundation of the country.
Yep.
If you can't put bad people in jail, then you can lose the foundation of the country and the whole country crumbles. And I'm so honored and proud to be a senior fellow with the David Horowitz Freedom Center. David is just an incredible guy. I introduced him to somebody many years ago and said, and he was originally a socialist. And David, so brash, he goes, Louie, I was a full-bore commie. What are you talking about? My mother was a commie. I was a commie. My daddy was a commie. We were commies. We were communists. We weren't socialists. We were communists. And he was one of the very top leaders in the late 60s, early 70s. And he said that one of their lines, one of the things, and I know you've talked about this in other podcasts, about creating chaos. What's the deal?
Mm-hmm.
But it goes right to the heart. He said this was our motto behind the scenes that we didn't talk about publicly. And it was the worse, the better. The more chaos you create, the more quickly we will finally get to that Marxist revolution we've been seeking for decades, going back to the early
Order through chaos. Yep.
Yeah. So you get that chaos that's strong enough. And I'd ask him one time, well, I was a little curious. You guys were planning riots and protests at the 68 Democrat convention, in Chicago, of all places, and
Of course.
like it was this year.
Yep.
But they were nominating Hubert Humphrey. He was one of the most liberal candidates nationally for president ever. And yet you guys were doing the rioting and protests there. And you had in 68, you had Nixon being nominated by the Republicans. I would have thought you'd do all your rioting and stuff at the Republican convention. He said, well, it helped us that Humphrey supported Vietnam. So that enabled us to get people out, going strong in the streets and raising Cain. But there was some thought that if a liberal like Humphrey got elected, it might be tougher to get young people out in the streets rioting, where if Nixon got elected, we felt like we'd have a really good chance of getting young people out in the streets and creating more chaos. And when your motto is the worse, the better, well, that fits the formula. So anyway, it's interesting. These people play the long game.
Very much so.
And David, in the 80s, had a complete turnaround and realize, and it really, of course, one of his most famous books, The Radical Son, because his parents stayed commies till the days they died, as far as I know.
which is pretty
And
rare, actually.
yeah,
Look,
but they
one
were
of my
out
sons.
as communists back in the 1950s with McCarthy
Oh, we've
era. I
always had a
mean,
big communist party in this country that
yeah,
very few people talk about. I think, last I heard, there's 950,000 registered American communists. 950,000 people openly
yeah.
communist, but they all changed
I
their
read
mind.
an article,
Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, I read an article this week that uh, I forget which socialist group, maybe Democrat socialists, that's communist, but
Yep,
they were bragging that we already have a number of members that are in Congress. And going,
they
wow.
do. They absolutely do. Well, Bernie Sanders is openly socialist. He has an
Yeah,
S next
yeah,
to his
he's
name. He
out
doesn't even
there.
hide it. But so my son's one of my son's boxing
Well,
coaches
he
is an old.
does hide it when it comes to practicing what he preaches,
Of
owning
course,
multiple homes, being a millionaire, and, that
12
kind of
billion
thing.
from big pharma.
He sure hides being a communist when it comes to his own personal life. But yeah, out there, he brags about being one publicly.
Yeah, one of my son's boxing coaches was a follower. So he was in the 12 group of people that followed Saul Alinsky around the country when he was younger. He
Really?
was a boxer. He was a boxer also. He actually sparred with Ali and a bunch of other guys. But he has told me he's now he's not I wouldn't call him a Christian. He does say like everyone should live by the words of Jesus, but he hasn't like confessed to me yet. He will turn. A good guy. But he's a kind of the reformed, it sounds like David a lot as well, because he actually came up to me when he heard that, my political stances. And I said, then he told me he was a follower of Saul Alinsky. And I'm like, okay, so you were a Luciferian. And he said, what? And I go, you were a Luciferian. At the last line in the Rules for
Oh,
Radicals
yeah.
by Saul Alinsky, they dedicate it to the first and only rebel, Lucifer. That book is literally dedicated to Lucifer. But he
Yeah.
is now like very active in the conservative movement. He is very
Wow.
involved in like educating kids. He's been doing a bunch of he has his own podcast with about 500,000 subscribers, but it's all about enlightening the youth away from what he learned from the order through chaos model of the Rules for Radicals. So there's hope in this country. There's a road to Damascus, right? There is definitely a
Well,
road to Damascus, and Saul
well,
will turn into Paul.
and like I say, I love the guy, but David, he was in the hospital back in May last year, and I called him while he was in the hospital, and he said something about, well, I don't know, it's in God's hands. And I said, David, that doesn't sound like the agnostic you say you are. And he said, well, have you read my new book? And I said, I didn't think it was out quite yet. He said, no, it came out a few days ago. And this is it, America Betrayed. And it's so interesting, Eric, and I would commend it to you. I'll send you a copy. But
Please.
it's he doesn't say that our great founding documents, our Constitution, Declaration, our founding was more based on Voltaire or Montesquieu or so many of the people, Locke, so many of the people that were given credit. He said it mainly based on, as it said, a Christian monk, and the
Yes.
monk's name is Luther. And it was Luther's reading of the Bible going, whoa, wait a minute. We're all supposed to be equal in God's eyes. And that really did so much to form the basis. So it's an amazing book. And
I can't wait to read it now.
yeah, early on he points out, as communists, we knew we were all greedy, ambitious, had all these selfish and a lot of shortcomings in our personalities in our lives, but our thinking was, but if you just give us more power, then we can fix everything. And
Yep.
he's, how arrogant were we, he thought. But no, looking back, we were so arrogant. Think, oh yeah, we got all these shortcomings, but give us more power, we'll fix everything. Yeah, right. So
Yeah,
anyway,
you
very
can't fix the roads, but you can fix the climate, right? It's kind of the same model that has continued to
yeah, there
persist
you
in
go.
America.
Yeah, very similar.
What a great story, though. Like I've been telling people this for years because we have a lot of politicians, judges, bankers, business people with very checkered pasts, and I've always said to people, Saul was a Christian slaughterer, Jesus intervened, and he basically wrote the New Testament. So God can change people's lives, including communists who have hearts, and some of them don't have hearts. You'll find your Soros and your Schwab and these guys who have just completely sold out to the darkness. That's so good. I can't. America Betrayed. I haven't read it, but I'm gonna promote it right here. Everyone should read this. It sounds interesting. I'm gonna read it this weekend.
Sadly, David has struggled with his voice for the last year. So normally he writes a book and he's on all the talk shows, all over TV, conservative shows. But because of his voice, he was not able to do those shows. And so it didn't get the promotion a Horowitz book normally would. And it's not long, it's just a jewel of a book. But he told me he thought it was the best thing he had ever written. And it's not a long book, but I think it is. It's just extraordinary. And I was also especially touched, he's Jewish. And here he is giving credit for the foundation of this great republic of ours, democratic principles to form a republic, to Luther. And, I'd been a big fan of Luther, but then when I saw some of his comments later in life about really anti-Semitic, and David,
he wrote a book called The Jews and Their Lies, right? I'm a huge Luther historian. And that is a problem in this country that we're talking about.
But David says, but don't you understand? He had thought Christians would convert when given a chance, and when they didn't, he just lashed out of them. And so he's totally forgiving of what Luther did and said toward the end, because of what he did, in realizing we're equal in God's eyes.
100%. And that is a topic, this is a big topic coming out right now. We have anti-Semitism laws in Texas and schools. We have free speech. We also have open dialogue. So I think it's important that the Jewish community, the Christian community, which I'm my stance on this. I don't believe in Judeo-Christian. We are separate, and that's fine. But we should have open dialogue and civil discourse and find a way to work together instead of just making it illegal to question anything. Exactly. That's a topic we'll get into at a later date. Let's get into tariffs. Let's get into tariffs and taxes. This is such a huge topic, and I'm so happy to have you on here because I have a lot of people asking me questions. And from an economist standpoint, tariffs are absolutely mandatory. We have been getting ripped off for 80 years. That is a statistical fact. You have the left that doesn't want it because it doesn't feed their oligarchs. It feeds our oligarchs, as the Bernie Sanders fight oligarchy campaign persists with AOC, which is one of the funnier things. The funniest thing we've seen recently, Louie, though, is Letitia James, who is now lashing out because she's being tried for mortgage fraud, which is convictable and provable, as opposed to, saying, you've been to Mar-a-Lago, I've been to Mar-a-Lago. If that's worth $18 million, I'll take 3 of them, right? Like, give me 3 Mar-a-Lagos at $18 million bucks. Yeah. That's just funny. I'm just the topic in there. But tariffs are a good idea, but they come hand in hand with reducing or eliminating taxation on the people. So there is a 2-step plan with this. You increase taxes, which are now 21 billion, has already come in a week and a half of tariffs. That's a great number. It's only 10% of what we sent to Ukraine. It's 0.005% of the overall national debt. But if you multiply that out from 10 days into 10 years, you're looking at about a 15% cut in the national deficit. You're looking at the overall spending rates in this country dropping. The next phase has to be taxes. So I'm very much a Ron Paul guy. I don't believe in taxes. I think that taxes are okay if they're direct and they have a transparent use. I don't have a problem paying those taxes. I think all Americans have a problem paying. I call it air tax. Federal income tax is nothing more than a tax to breathe air. And like we talked about off camera, I also don't my heart wants to believe that we'll eliminate it someday. I just don't see that being a reality. But I think we will see a big reduction in taxes. What does that look like? Say we have tariffs that are doing, $300-400 billion a year. How serious does Congress get about helping the people? Because we've seen nothing but Congress ruling against their constituents for years now. If we had high tariffs, having sat in Congress for so long, what does that process look like from the inside? Are there going to be congressmen who are just an absolute no? How does that work? I'm always curious about that.
Well, there's the advocates for raising more money and spending all we get in plus some. And that's the Democratic Party. In 2006, actually, that's when we passed the 2007 budget. Uh, One of the things that helped Democrats win the majority that year, they were screaming loud and long that we should have balanced the budget. You know, we were 140 billion about from balancing with the 2007 budget that we passed, appropriations. And they just went on and on. You elect us. Well, their idea is we want to balance, but we want to increase the heck out of taxes to do it. Whereas, you know, Republicans don't want to really increase taxes, but then you've got a lot of Republicans that go, well, it's easier to just go on along with a little bit here or a little bit there. And that's where we get in trouble. But then, you know, the Wall Street bailout happened, which allowed Obama, when he got into office 4 months later, to say, hey, you gave Bush 700 billion, you can give me 800 billion and I'll get this thing going. And we never recovered from that. Mm-hmm. And so the taxes, I think it's possible. You know, we had the advocation for the fair tax. You're familiar with that?
Yes.
And I like the idea, you know, but I just have this overwhelming concern that we pass it, and then even though it's in the law that's being proposed, then we do away with income tax altogether. I'm just afraid, whoops, we didn't quite get rid of that amendment, and then a few years later, well, we need a little more money, so we'll go back to that 1% income tax, never go higher than that, which is what they talked about when it first passed. So I have that fear if you did a fair tax that we would end up with both. And I know I'm assured, no, that wouldn't happen. But I've been an advocate. Look, surely we could just agree, if you make more, you ought to pay more, pay your fair share. Let's get a flat tax in place, but it needs to be low, and just make it fair for everybody. Let everybody have some skin in the game.
If we all knew, it would be easier to palate taxation. If if you make more, you pay more, but you should pay the same percentage, right?
Exactly.
So a flat tax, wealthy people, and then you can take away all the tax loopholes that Democrats complain about, because that's all we're doing at a higher income level, is trying to get to the fair share portion. If you create laws for us to get taxed, Trump was brilliant at it when Hillary Clinton said, well, you don't pay taxes. And he said, that's because of the laws your buddies put in place. So a flat tax by itself, you know, if you're a plumber or a big time CEO and you know at the end of the year you've got a 5% tax bill for the nation, no one complains about that. I still will, just to let you know, Louie, I will still complain about 5%. Because I live in Texas and we don't pay any state income tax, but they shift it, right? I just got my property tax bill and it about made me choke. But that's what they're doing I got appeal. I literally got my appeal today. And Mississippi just did the same thing. They have just passed a bill to eliminate state income tax by 2030, which is great. But the things people miss, and this is what you know with your political background, is as soon as that announcement was made, the next morning a committee met about raising property taxes and sales taxes. So we have to look at these things from, like, my fear would be if we went to, say, a 5% flat tax, which would be heaven sent, right? Especially the higher income employees with no write-offs are paying 37% of their income. I won't even tell you what that does to families. Yes, they make more money, but they also pay a lot more. But the problem is that taxes are budgetary. So when state officials get together, they look at a total number of taxation they need to bring in. So it's just kind of a chess game. Like, well, we'll reduce it here, but raise it here, and we'll publicize this reduction big time, and then we'll make sure reporters don't report about this higher tax in this other area, because at the end of the year they still have the same amount of revenue coming in. And the fact that the IRS, that our government, IRS actually isn't government, But the fact that they are called the Internal Revenue System, that actually by itself is offensive. Like, we are a revenue model for people, cattle on a tax farm. I'm just curious, like, what do these conversations look like in Congress? If there was a bill, and I think Mike Lee put on Twitter yesterday that I think we should abolish the IRS, get rid of the income tax. Does he get attacked the next morning, or does he get praised the next morning when he shows up in Congress? What happens to Mike Lee when he makes a statement like that in public?
I don't think he gets attacked. Some people will think, oh, he's just doing this for pure politics.
Sure.
But those of us that have been here a while, we know, that's just political, that we can't do away with it. And that was a mentality I fought for 18 years, that yes, we can do something about our problems. We don't have to keep going along with them. So I appreciate Mike taking that position. It could be done if people just had the courage of their convictions. And you look back at Obamacare, Eric.
Ugh.
The Democrats knew that it was unpopular. They read the polling, but they were so determined to get it passed that they knew they could probably lose the majority by getting it passed. They knew that. They saw the numbers. But there were those leaders that were so dedicated to getting the socialist, huge socialist measure passed, and the government getting so involved in the most personal areas of our lives that it was worth it if they lost the majority for a little while. We don't have Republican leaders. In the past, we have not had Republican leaders willing to do that. And I was thrilled, Mike Johnson got elected to be speaker, but it felt like for a long time that whether it was Schumer or Keem Jeffers or whoever at the White House was running the country, that they were able to push him more than I would have thought. But
Hakeem Jeffries is
but that's how dedicated the Democrats were. They knew they were really risking the majority, but to them it was worth it, and they were glad to do it because they knew what it meant for moving towards socialism.
Well, Hakeem Jeffries reminds me of when I was a kid, I got generic shoes, right? So everybody got, sometimes I got good shoes, but kids had Nikes and I got Pro Wings. Like, Hakeem Jeffries is like the Pro Wings version of Obama. He's like a discount Obama. He's just awful as a human being and dangerous to the American people.
Well, he was easy to talk to, but he just is so far left in his politics.
And you bring up a good point. They're willing to sacrifice their own power to gain more power. Like, that's a very Marxist trend. Well, they'll look at the advantage. Obamacare is a great example of this. Horrible act for the country. Everyone's premiums went up. I still remember Obamacare put one of my companies out of business because we were treading on thin numbers anyway. And all of a sudden we got this huge bill. So people lost the coverage that they wanted, that they needed. They got this new coverage. It was more expensive, and everyone was angry for about 6 months, and they bombarded us with news stories, and everyone forgot about it. But that's what Marxists do. You've nailed that, Louie. They're willing to say, I'll lose majority as long as I get this win. I'll take these losses. Do we have people on the conservative side in Washington, D.C. right now who have the courage to make this type of change?
Yeah, we sure do. And, back in 2010, when we got won the majority back, I knew Boehner was going to be a get along, go along kind of guy like Speaker Sam Rayburn, and that this country really needed a fighter in there, and it wasn't him. But everybody was so thrilled about getting the majority back. I was the sole person that stood up among the pep squad and the cheerleaders and all for him becoming speaker, and said, and laid out. I actually nominated Newt Gingrich so I could lay out for this huge freshman class. I knew I had no chance, but I thought, well, there's a tiny chance, but if I can use my speech time to lay out all the things that he promised that he didn't do, and show that there were a lot of lies over those years that he was from 06 to 2010, and that he was not the reason we won the majority back. It was because of Obamacare. Um, but if I could lay out a lot of the things he had promised and repeatedly broken promises in that speech to nominate Newt, and the reason I nominated Newt, because everybody else I tried to nominate that was in Congress, they said, look, I know we need a new speaker, but it isn't going to happen. So I've got a shot at a chairmanship, and you nominate me, I will stand up right then and there and say I withdraw, from being a candidate. So I didn't have anybody, and I'm going, God. But I emailed Newt that night before, and I said, Newt, I'd like to nominate you for speaker. And he just shot back 2 words, that's impractical. And I went, great. Somebody finally didn't say, no, this is great. Okay. So I knew not to mention a name till the end or they'd quit listening. So I laid out all the reasons that he should not be speaker, all the broken promises from the past, so that those 70 or so new freshmen, as they got into the year and he started breaking promises, they would go, wow, this is really what Louie was talking about that day. And Thomas Massey told me, he and Bridenstine were sitting there, and he leaned over to Jim and said, when I was making my speech, this has got to be the craziest guy in all of Congress. And he said 6 months later, we both agreed you were the smartest guy in all of Congress.
That's the way it works.
But I make that point only to say that was 2010. And I did have some great political friends in Congress, but since they didn't feel like there was any chance of electing somebody besides Boehner, they didn't want to risk their chance of being a subcommittee chairman, a committee chairman, that kind of thing. Okay. They were going to be with me, but when I didn't have a chance, that was clear. Okay, I got it. But I'm telling you now, we've got like 40 people that will stand up and say, this just isn't right. So I didn't want to leave Congress, and I never planned to stay 18 years, but I didn't want to leave. The Boy Scout in me was saying, you got to leave a place better than you found it.
Yep.
And it just seemed like it kept getting worse. But the one thing I can say is there are dozens of people that will stand up for what's right. And that's a whole lot different from where we were in 2010, 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. We just had very few of us that would do that. And so from that standpoint, I think Congress is improving.
That's great.
And the founders showed you don't have to have everybody in order to make a real difference.
That's great. I mean, that's all we ask for as Americans, is like putting people in office who are willing to fight to do the right thing. That's all. It's not a hard request. Follow your constituents. People bash Marjorie Taylor Greene, but she has the highest approval rating from her constituents. Like, she is serving her district. Like her or not like her, she's doing what she was elected to do. Great step there. I'm going to get into an appointment here as we end. This is a very touchy subject on the internet, and one that I think you probably know better than anyone. And that subject right now is Pam Bondi. So we have an attorney general who was appointed by Trump. She's been in office. She's already made, I think the last number was like 12 promises that she hasn't fulfilled in just a short period of time. So I give her grace. A lot of people don't do that. Everyone in this administration is in their 3rd month. Okay. Everyone calm down. Yeah. This is month 3. Trump has made it seem like 37 years, and that's a good thing. We need radical change. But these people are all in their 3rd month. I'm a human being. I get anxious too, but I always kind of go back to like go into prayer, and you'll come out and say, give these people grace. But Pam Bondi has spent more time on Fox News than any politician, any talk show host. She was on Fox News 3 times yesterday, while, and her only bust so far is a drug bust in Miami that her and Kash Patel took credit for. Again, 3 months, guys, not being a Debbie Downer. I'm trying to uplift your spirits here. 3 months, we're seeing a lot of good changes. But what are your thoughts on Pam Bondi? Like, me personally, I wish she would have never said anything about the Epstein files and just dropped them when they were ready. That would have been a better thing than making a big announcement and then doing nothing. What is the overwhelming opinion of her?
Well, I can't. You know what?
I don't want to put you in a tough spot. Sorry.
Yeah. No. And Eric, I've lived in tough spots most of my life, but no, I want to give her a chance. I was pleased when she got appointed and was confirmed. I was really concerned that we would not get a conservative confirmed because I saw, the damage that has been done in the past when Republicans had the chance and they didn't appoint good AGs. And with Jeff Sessions, he is a wonderful person, and I really like Jeff, and we were friends, and we were both concerned about the border. But I think his naivety kept him. Well, he would tell me, Louis, the career people are telling me this is what had to be done. This is what I have to do, and I'm going. Those career people are Obama lovers, and they are Trump haters. They are not your friends. You don't listen to them. But I think going back to his days as U.S. attorney, he just trusted people that were in career slots, even though, they were really diehard Democrats. So I think we just need to give Pam a chance.
Time.
But I was concerned about recent appointment of the DC head of the DC office, but hopefully things will clear up and we'll get the right people where they need to be. But
I think we will. I think in the next 4 years it'll be fixed. I think that it's 3 months. It's 3 months, guys.
We can't wait long.
Can't waste a minute.
We need to be doing all the important stuff within the next 2 years. That's got to get done. And Mike Johnson, John Thune, everybody needs to be on board pushing to get everything done by the end of 2 years in, which is what Obama did. And whether we like it or not, Eric, he fundamentally transformed America, like he said, but it was not in a good way. It was moving us toward being socialist, communist, progressive, whatever you want to call it. He moved us in a terrible direction, but he did fundamentally transform our country.
Oh yeah, I mean, people I'm originally from Chicago, so I have a lot of friends that still talk highly about Obama, and you can look at everything. Racism jumped up by a quadrupled. We had more Muslims moving here than ever before. We only searched 3% of the containers that came in from foreign nations. He completely overregulated. Nothing got served. We have no idea what came in the country while he was here. So many problems. But I think you brought up a good point in this conversation. They were willing, just like you said, in that first 2-year term, they were willing to lose power to have a victory. So I'm hoping that the conservatives that are here now are not worried about midterms, right? That's always a concern. Midterms come up in 2 years. Forget midterms. If we're kind, our pastor had a very good saying the other day. Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they are the children of God." He didn't say the peacekeepers. He said the peacemakers, and peacemakers have to raise a little bit of problems in order to get things done. So if we have peacemakers in Congress that are willing to fight, and they don't care about the midterm election, because to be honest, if they do what they're supposed to do, conservatives are overwhelmingly going to double down on them. You're going to lose the left. So that's going to happen no matter what.
And actually, that 2006 midterm election, Boehner and Hastert were so focused on just trying to hold on to what we had. We didn't want to do anything too big. We'll do some patriotic sounding bills, that kind of thing. But we didn't do anything that would really help the country. Well, we worried about the midterms. And so we lost the majority because of their fear of losing the majority. And, we could have kept the majority in '06. Can you imagine if we had kept the majority, even it might have helped keep Obama out of office. But we were so pitiful and lackluster in standing up for what we believed in '05 and '06 that we lost the majority. And that's what really, Eric, I'm scared could happen if we don't get these things done. If we do like happened in '05 and '06, Bush, he he wanted to do something really important to help the country, and he made that to fix Social Security so there would be Social Security for future generations. And he was beat up so badly about it that the House and Senate leaders said, that may hurt our midterms, so let's don't do anything. If they could have done something to preserve Social Security so it would never be an issue again, and instead, as you mentioned early in this interview, well, they kicking the can down the road, and that's what they did. And every time Republicans do that, we get in trouble.
Yes. And we lose big for years and years. It's all that they kick the can and then the can kicks them. And that's what happens every time. Yep. Every person out there. One thing, I had a great interview with Patrick Henningsen on here the other day, and we were talking about Trump as a populist. Like, you can't deny Trump as a populist. And Trump listens to the people. He listens. He has people watching Twitter. Get out there and be active. He will listen. If the leader's listening, all of his partners are going to listen. Congress and Senate, he's going to force them to listen. Start speaking up about peacemakers. We don't need more peacekeepers. We need people in Congress who are willing to not toe the line, break the line, and create a new one, which will create peace politically, economically, and socially in this country. So speak up. Get out there. Say anything. Don't be afraid of what other people say. Speak your mind. They will listen. This is an administration that has proven to listen. They just proved it yesterday by not bombing Iran at the behest of Israel. Trump is telling you no one wanted to bomb Iran. No one wants to do that. And he actually didn't do it. And he's turning in that direction, I believe, because there's so many people speaking up about peace. I don't care what side of the war happens. I just want peace. I don't like Hamas. No one likes Hamas, but I definitely don't want innocent people being killed. And I don't want a war in the Middle East that could escalate through the entire world. Peace is the option, and Trump is listening. So, Louie, this has been fantastic because you are one of the most beloved folks at Washington, D.C. on the conservative side, because you had courage and you've put yourself in bad positions and you've tried to sacrifice anything you could for the betterment of people. I am very encouraged to hear that you, as a judge of character, are telling us that we have dozens of fighters there now who are willing to be peacemakers. No more Boehners. We don't need any more Boehners. We don't need any more rhinos. And that term is bad because there's dinos too. You're either a communist or a patriot at this point. Like, it's just pretty obvious. We need more America first, America agendas to be fulfilled. And Louie, this has just been such an awesome as always, man. We got to get a dinner. We got to go to dinner one night. You and I got to go grab a steak on me. We're in Texas. If we don't eat a steak, we're communists too. So we got to admit to that. But Louie, our time is up today. Final thoughts for people out there. Give them something you're scared about, because I'm scared too that people bend a knee to win midterms. I'm scared there's something you're scared about, something you're excited about. And then I'm going to ask you a question with all of your experience. After you say something you're scared about, something you're happy about or excited about. And then the last thing is, I want you to tell me, if you could go back to 25-year-old Louie Gohmert, what advice would you give him? Start with your fear, your optimism, and then advice.
Well, first of all, I don't know about fear, but I am very concerned about the Republicans not getting the things done that have to be done. I mean, it's not enough for DOJ to help streamline government if the Congress doesn't do their job and make those things into law. and come along and make it easier to fire people who are not doing their jobs also, then it's just going to be just a brief little puff in the wind. These things have got to be done by Congress. And I'm glad to see John Thune pushing some of the stuff through. It seems like to me he's doing a good job, and I liked him. I got along with him well and he was actually very helpful in the House on some key votes when he came down and helped us, kind of lobby guys that were trying to fall to the left, and we got them to do the right thing and vote the right way, and it was good for the country. But I'm still concerned that there are too many people in some positions that are not going to get Congress pushed through doing what they need to do. And that includes dealing with the judiciary. It includes dealing with the executive branch, getting that down to size. That's all critical. So that's a big concern.
What are you most excited about?
The fact that Trump got elected. Really, if Kamala Harris had won, Eric, we would have knowingly voted in a socialist regime. Whether you want to call it socialist, it would soon be full bore commie. I love Dostoevsky's quote that Solzhenitsyn used in Gulag Archipelago. The problem with Marxism is atheism. Yes. And I saw that when I was in the Soviet Union for a whole summer. There is no room for Christianity or any religion in a Marxist country because the government is Marxist. And they had lots of signs that Lenin is here, his face, Lenin's Tsunami, Lenin is here. But I'd seen him in Lenin's tomb and he ain't here. So anyway, so it's just really critical that we keep pushing. We won that election, and thank God for President Trump not giving up, just not bowing to physical, the lawfare, the attempts on his life, the commercial attacks on him and his family and his friends. He kept pushing. So I'm very pleased with that. We've got a chance, and that was what I was praying for. If we could just have another chance, that would be great.
No time to waste. We got to take every second of his administration and get it done.
Take advantage of it. Absolutely.
Last question. You're 25 years old. You see yourself at 25 years old. What advice do you give to a 25-year-old American today with all of your wisdom and experience on life? I wanted to ask you this question in the last interview, and I left it off the list. But I love hearing this question answered by guys who've been down such long roads. Like, what advice would you give to the youth in America if you were 25 again? What would you tell them?
Well, 25, I was in the Army at the time when I was 25, and it was not a pleasant place to be back then. People didn't like us. It was after Vietnam, but I know what you're saying. And that is, listen to your heart. And if you believe in prayer, like I do, you pray. And I read the Bible every day, and it makes a difference. It makes a difference. It helps with a firm foundation. But then I go back to what I told you, the lesson I learned early on as a judge. If I was going to run from the job I ran for, I shouldn't even be there. And most people have never dealt with that issue. And it's true in the job where they are. If you're going to run away from what you worked so hard to get, then maybe that's not the job you should be in. So anyway, A lot of people say, let your conscience be your guide. As a felony judge, I would not say that, because I've seen what happens to consciences when you hang around with the wrong people. So if you were blessed with a great mother, then you heard this, and I'll leave this as the final. Be careful who you hang around with.
Yeah. No, that's normally when I ask this question, which I don't do every interview, I always have my own answer. I don't share it. When I asked you what I would say to myself at 25, the immediate response in my head was, put down the beer and grab your Bible. That was the first thing that I thought. And I posted this out today, and this fits right in line to close us out today. I posted this on Twitter and Telegram. This is Psalm 1:1-3. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, but his delight is in the law of the Lord. He is like a tree planted by streams of water that yields its fruit in its season. And that just fits so perfectly with what you just said. Yeah. So I'm going to wrap this up. Louie, how can everyone find you out there? I know you're not super active on this stuff, but how can they find you? How can they hear from you? Books, anything. What do you want people to find?
Well, Rep Gohmert is where I am on Twitter. But anyway, yeah, of course, I was thinking you might go first. You know, a wise man leans to the right, a foolish man leans to the left. But there is that.
It's literally biblical.
It is. It literally is. But anyway, love to hear from you.
Absolutely. Well, Louie Gohmert, God bless you. God bless this great country. Thank you for joining us here again. And it's been so nice to have you. Looking forward to have you back in a few months. And we're definitely grabbing a steak. You let me know the place and the time. Bill's on me. I got you.
All right, Eric.
Thanks, Louie.
Sounds good.